Okay, so we're live now?
No, we're not live. We're
Okay,
just recording.
recording, okay.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Nightflight. I'm Judith Koba, and today I have Wayne Bush with me again. He's a regular on the show, and I'm happy to have him. He has written a very interesting article on his website, which is trickedbythelight.com. The article is The Fine Game of Life or the meaning of life. The Fine Game of Nil, sorry, the Fine Game of Nil, which is an anagram for the meaning of life. Wayne, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Judith. How are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you for
So,
having me on your show.
of course, I couldn't resist. When I read that article, I thought I have to talk to you about that. So,
Well, I feel it's probably the most important article I've written since I put the website up, like, what is it, 15 years ago or whatever. And, when I first put out the website about, the light being a trick and all that, I didn't really get any feedback. I got like one email in like 3 or 4 years, and nobody asked to interview me. And so I just took it down, and I feel like this is like another point where, like, now I'm not saying, just to avoid the light, not go to the light, but now I'm actually put, I hope, a cogent, argument about why the darkness is okay, or why the void, as the near-death experiencers call it, is it's a viable alternative to the light. So other than just, acting out of fear, no, don't go to the light, because people would be like, what do you do? Just stay in the darkness. And it's like, well, there's some reason for that.
okay. So, please define for us what you mean when you say the void, because I'm pretty sure I could ask like 20 people and I would get a lot of different answers. So what is the void in your book?
Well, in my book, I think the void, according to what some of the near-death experiencers have stated, is that it's just this, it's non-duality, that it's like, they'll either describe it as both light and dark, or neither light nor dark, that it's, has a neutral point, but yet they, I think there's a misnomer there. That's really not, you think of a void, you think it's just complete emptiness, and it doesn't sound like any kind of place you would want to be, but yet the void is everything. They call it nothing because it's like your own pure consciousness, your own awareness, but yet it is everything, and it's actually like the womb of creation, and you can literally create anything from, it's like pre-Big Bang. And I'll go through like 24 or so near-death experiences where they were in the void, and just like a little snippet, like a one-liner from it, and how they describe it, and so you get a much better idea of what the void is when I do that.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the void is also darkness?
Well, that's really, like I said, it's hard to put into words. They say you can't really describe it in words, but they do describe it as darkness. But it's also described as the clear light. Like in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they describe it as clear light, and they don't mean light like as the way we think of light. It's more like clarity. It's pureness, and it's like a quality versus just light per se. But see, it's a duality. There's light and dark. Like, technically, pure light, if it's unreflected, is darkness. Like, if you think of the sun as shining light in space, and we only see the light when it's reflected off of planets, or it's refracted through the atmosphere, or it's reflected off of objects here, and so we see the light. But in pure space, where it's dark. And they've done experiments where they've shown that light is actually darkness. So it's tough to put into words.
You know why I asked that? Because the way I look at it, darkness is also fertility. It's also life, because seeds grow in the darkness. Yeah, you have to put it into the soil. If you just throw it on top of the soil, it will rot and the sun will probably dry it out. So darkness is not necessarily, yeah, even here in this duality game, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's also fertility.
Yeah, and you can't have light without the dark. I mean, that's where we're in this duality. And if it was all light, like I said, it would look like dark. Like think of a painting that's just, you know, pure white. I mean, it wouldn't even be a painting. It wouldn't have, you know, it's the shades and the different colors and stuff that brings out a beautiful, you know, masterpiece. You know, so it's a duality. You can't have light without dark. I
Yeah.
mean, if you go outside of the duality and you're in the void, then you know, then
Yeah.
it's maybe possible. But
Yeah, or think of the womb where the baby is growing. It's
yeah,
also
yeah,
dark.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Mhm. But I think the problem is that we have a tendency to think that darkness is connected to evil. When we say things like, oh, that film, that movie, that was very, very dark.
Right. But, you know, people wouldn't go to see movies if there wasn't any kind of darkness in it whatsoever. If there wasn't a villain, if there wasn't conflict or drama in the plot, it would just be boring. And if you look at like the top 20 or 50 movies or television shows, they have so much violence and darkness in it that is, I mean, most of them, a lot of them were like wars. Like one of the highest rating movies, what is it, the Schindler's List and stuff like that. I mean, some of that stuff is very dark. You know, it's not pleasant to think about, but yet it's highly rated. So, yeah, you like I said, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, that's true. You always need certain characters in movies to have a good story.
Absolutely.
So, your most important article, walk us through that.
Okay. Hopefully you can see this. I don't remember sharing it. Can you see that at all?
No, I see you.
Oh no. I was wondering. I don't see any kind of link for the to share my
Okay,
website.
there is a green button where it says
Okay.
share screen.
Share. Okay. Okay. Whiteboard. Screen. Okay, I got it. Hopefully that'll do it then. Okay, now you see it?
Yes, now I see
Okay.
that.
Okay, so that's my front page. And if you scroll down, and it's this article right here, 731, The Fine Game of Nil, the so-called void of non-duality and pure awareness. And as you'll see in that animated GIF I produced, it's the meaning of life. An anagram for it is the fine game of nil. So I'm
Can
going
you speak up a little bit?
I'll speak up a little bit. I'll try. So, like I said, this is the most important article I've written since I started the website. And you know, people are always asking, you know, if we don't go to the light, then should we just stay in the darkness? And so, it's important to understand that light and dark are dualistic terms, and you can't have one without the other. In fact, pure unreflected light is actually perceived as darkness, and for any action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if one decides to go to the loving, good, white light, then how long can one stay there before the inevitable oscillation or opposite reaction must occur? And does an opposite realm of relative dimness or darkness have to exist in order to maintain this positive light? It's, you know, is it a hell-like realm of darkness necessary where beings suffer? And, you know, if so, welcome to Earth. So, you know, near-death experiencers routinely report being forced to come back to Earth against their free will on an undisclosed mission that they have yet to fulfill. And therefore, it's, you know, they often tell them it's not yet their time. So they're sent back against their will or coaxed into doing so. So some say they were given a choice, but how do we know they wouldn't have been forced to come back had they chosen to stay? And in this world, when someone is forced to do something against their will, it's a crime. If we take money against someone's will, it's stealing or theft. If we take sex against someone's will, it's rape. If we take a life against someone's will, it's murder. But somehow, this being of light gets a free pass as being loving. You know, love is also a verb, an action, and we should look at the actions. And there are cases where the light beings impersonate religious figures. There was this one case where the near-death spirit had to ask, "Are you really the Virgin Mary?" before it showed its true identity. And some would call this lying or being deceptive.
Okay. Yeah, I think in that situation we can experience a lot of entities pretending to be something that they are not. Would you agree?
Well, clearly, yeah. I mean, they absolutely are pretending. Now, the near-death experiencers will say that they're doing that to make you feel comfortable, that they'll appear as the deity that you're familiar with or that you like in order to set you at ease, or they say that you're given the experience that you most need at this point in your so-called evolution. So, but yeah, there is absolutely no doubt that some of these spirits are, they can take any form they want, and so sometimes they do appear as a religious figure or God or whatever, and you got to question that, because
Yeah.
especially when this entity didn't tell him up front, "Oh, hey, I'm going to appear to you as the Virgin Mary so you'll feel comfortable." No. So I don't know, it seems a little suspicious.
So it has a lot to do with what we actually expect.
It does, but it's not like an end all be all. There are people that don't necessarily have the experience of what they were expecting. I mean, but it could be very deep. It could get into your subconscious and fears and all that kind of stuff. So, even if you're raised a Christian and like, I remember this one, like, preacher or somebody who was really a devout Christian, and he got chastised by this being of light, and so I don't think he was expecting that, unless it was just some kind of deep-seated fear that he had, guilt, how the Catholics and stuff would sometimes, people get wrecked with guilt from all that. So, but yeah, in general, I agree. It's a lot of it's mostly based on what you're expecting. And I think that's the danger of religions. They'll teach you that you're a no good sinner, and that when you die, you're going to meet your maker, and you're going to be judged. Or in the East, Buddhism and Hinduism, you get told that you're going to come back over and over and over and over again until you can balance out your karma or become perfect. And of course, I mean, how many people, when you live 80 years, you're going to be doing some things to people that aren't nice. It's almost impossible not to. So I think it's very easy to control people at that point,
Yeah, I think that is a total nonsense statement, that you, for instance, you have to balance your karma.
Right.
Yeah. And we talked about that on other shows, and I will say it again, this Inkaya reincarnation cycle is an enslavement tool, in my opinion. If you see it otherwise, I'm okay with that.
No, I don't. But I mean, when you look at the word karma, that it's Sanskrit, and it literally means action. And so that's one of the points I'm trying to make in this article, is that this world that we're in, this duality, it's all about motion and oscillation and vibration, and these frequencies that, they fluctuate up and down, they pulse in and out, and it's all based on motion or action. And so what I'm trying to say is, hey, if you go to the void, these people say there's no time, there's no space, there's no movement, and so technically there's no action at that point. You're like basically potential energy instead of like kinetic energy. So if you think of it in those terms, then the karma becomes null and void, because there's no more action.
Yeah. What if I told you the void will not hurt you?
Exactly, the void. Well, there's like maybe a third of near-death experiencers that go to the void, and they have unpleasant experiences. Actually, it's probably not even that much. I think one of the near-death experience researchers, I think Jeffrey Long, or maybe it was the other guy, Van Pimmel, said that I think it was like 15% were unpleasant. So I think most of the people that were in a void have a very pleasant experience, but it's possible, if you manifest your own reality with your imagination or your intention. People have been kind of programmed in this life to think of the dark as being fearful. You're you're in the dark as a kid, and there's monsters under the bed and all this other kind of stuff. And so they manifest sometimes a fearful reality because they perceive themselves as being alone. But yet when we want to go to sleep at night and get a good night's rest and recharge our batteries and stuff, what do? We close our eyes and we turn out the light, and we're in darkness, and yet it's the most peaceful, relaxing thing there is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess we all know we can drive ourselves over the edge even while we are awake. Let's say you are planning to start a business or a project or whatever, and then for some stupid reason your fear mode takes over and you go on in your mind and and all of a sudden 20 minutes later you're already bankrupt and you haven't even started.
Yeah, it's this thought process, this chain of thoughts that can sometimes do us in.
Yeah.
We just get
Do
too
you
caught up
think
in
that
adrenaline.
that also applies in that moment, that if it really becomes nasty, the experience, is it possible that we drive ourselves over the edge if we are unable to relax into the moment, into the experience?
Absolutely, yes. And I think, there was this one near-death experiencer that was in the void, and he said he tried not to have any thoughts because he was in such a great state of being that he found that if he started having thoughts, then stuff would start manifesting, and he didn't want that at all. So he tried his hardest just to stay without thoughts, so that he could stay in that kind of blissful state. So yeah, I think if it can be like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you just get caught up in this cycle of fear and I don't know, it's all drama and conflict So I mean, I can go through some of those near-death experiences, and you get a much better idea for how they perceived it, and from there.
Okay, I know I told you before that for a couple of years I practiced Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. No. Wow.
I told you. I guess it was during
Interesting.
our second show. So
Okay.
I'm familiar with clear light meditation. I'm familiar with Pova, where you practice let's say conscious dying. While you're dying, you practice how to stay conscious. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And exit here, not down there.
Yeah. Right. So,
and okay, so, but then there came a point for me where I had to drop all isms.
right.
It surely didn't work any longer for me for multiple reasons. And so I left that behind and unlearned it, not in the sense that I forgot everything.
Sure.
And I'm also not saying that there was nothing valuable in it. But I had reached a point where I really, really had to drop all isms, like Buddhism, Hinduism,
Absolutely.
Nationalism, whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Everything what with ism I became allergic to it. So
yeah, it's just a guide, I think. I mean, like a lot of the Buddhists will say, they call it the middle path, and so you don't go from one extreme to the other. I don't think Buddhism, if you get to take anything to too much of an extreme to where, you just go meditate, like a monk, and you don't even have thoughts or any of that kind of stuff, you go into this comatose state. I mean, I just don't see that being valuable. And so they talk about having a mindfulness, like as you live throughout your life, and you're just aware of both at once. And so you can go about your life, but just don't forget that it's an illusion, that that it's a dream that you're in. And so yeah, I think it can be, if you take it to an extreme, it's just not good for you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, but I think I interrupted your line of thought.
No, no, I didn't. I don't have a line of thought. But I could, I don't know if you wanted me just to go through the article and kind of touch on some of the different topics that I had in there. If you just want to just do question and answer, either way is good for me.
Okay, so what I find interesting here is where you say that is there a viable alternative to go to the white light? Yes, there is. So why don't you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, like I said, I mean, if the viable alternative, I think if everything is duality, and from what we know, like physicists and stuff, they'll say that everything is energy and it's vibrating back and forth. It's this oscillation of cycles, highs and lows, and it's stuff is pulsating in and out. And so I was talking about how when people that do go to the white light, they end up, most of them end up being forced to come back. Now, of course, they didn't technically die, but and if there are some beings that are lying to them in the light. I mean, okay, let's put it this way: almost everybody, when they die, they're in that darkness or that void. I mean, I could cite the statistics even from Jeffrey Long, who's got the website nderf.org, has over 4,000 near-death experiences on it. And in his book, there's these different stages that people go through. And first of all, most of the people that have had some kind of bypass or something like that, they don't even have a near-death experience, but maybe there's a certain percentage that do, and then there's a certain percentage, maybe 65% of them that see a light. So that means 35% of them didn't even see a light. Then there's, I think he said 33% of them go through a tunnel. So that means that 2/3 of them didn't even go through the tunnel, and I assume didn't even go to the light. And I think he said like 16% or somewhere around there actually communicated with the being of light. So now I guess the thing is, I kind of make an assumption is that the longer you're dead and the had you stay in that state, then eventually maybe you would progress and get to that point. But the fact is that everybody kind of starts out in this darkness, and a lot of them see this light and it's alluring, or it's attractive, and they're curious, and maybe they've been programmed in life, to think of the light as God or whatever. So they go to this light. But the fact is, we start out in the darkness. So what I'm trying to say is that very well could be our natural state of being. Is it may be perceived as darkness. It's because it's just your awareness, and but what I'm trying to say is it's not really darkness. It's not that's why I put so-called void in the name of the title of the article, is because I don't want people to think of it as a void. People are kind of programmed to avoid a void. There's a movie called The Void, and it's a horror movie. It's terrible. And so, but what I'm trying to convince people is it's not a void as we think of it. It's everything there is. And these people that were in it, if you have this right mindset, that it's really peaceful. And it's I think one of the Hindu texts were saying that void is joy, and joy is the void, and stuff like that. So I mean, I go through like different religions and ancient texts and stuff like that, and how most of them are actually talking about the void or darkness as being some people call it the field or whatever, but there are, even in religions, they describe the darkness as being sort of like that womb that you were talking about. And so I don't know. I mean, people can go to the light if they want, and I don't think it's going to be a horrible thing. I think it is very loving, and for a while you're going to be comforted and everything's going to be great. But I think at some point, because it's part of the duality and it swings back and forth, at some point you're going to be asked, to come back to Earth, for whatever mission that, you have to evolve your soul and learn lessons and all this kind of stuff. And I don't see how that's even, why that's even necessary if you're infinite awareness, infinite energy, and that's what people say, like when they're basically in the void, is that they're everything. So it's like, what's the need to learn? I mean, when does it stop? You keep learning and growing, and it's like at some point, when is not enough? That's part of that desire. I think you're never satisfied. And I just think it's a trap, you know, personally. I mean, but like I said, if people want to go to the light and they like their life, there's a lot of people running around, they love life and they're having fun and they're happy, and that's great. If that's what they want to do, they can go. Some of us are ready to get off the roller coaster ride. You know, we don't like all the these experiences. So.
Yeah, I know that, you know, although that might sound strange, I do have fun, and I had a lot of fun in my life. But at the same time, I always felt misplaced here.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look what you said here, beyond good and evil, and you talk about the void here. So in other words, that probably has to do with how, what I said earlier, the more you are able to relax into that situation, the better the experience might be.
Right.
And if you like to go to the light, yeah, yes, okay, go ahead. But there is a pretty good chance that you will be siphoned off and recycled.
I would agree with that. When we talk about good and evil, I think if you think of it in terms of as this being a movie or a game that we've decided to play, it's an illusion. And so if think of this as if you're infinite awareness and you have the power to do anything you want, and so maybe you want to experience, you know, these experiences. So at some point, I mean, it's so hard to say because, you know, we're humans and we're caught in this duality, this illusion. But let's just say that maybe it gets boring, you know, and you want something more exciting. And so, you know, there was this Twilight Zone episode where the guy dies, and I think I only saw it once as long ago, so I'm probably completely off on this. But I think, you know, he meets this man. He's in a fine white suit, and he's got white hair and white beard, and he finds out that he can manifest anything he wants. And so, you know, he starts like playing around a golf or whatever, and you know, you're hitting holes in ones. Everything you do is just perfect. And at some point, eventually, he realizes, wait a minute, I'm not in heaven. You know, it becomes like a hell for him because everything's just perfect, and there's no challenge. You know, you stagnate, you atrophy. And so I think, you know, at some point maybe you want to have a little bit of excitement or you want to challenge, and so you purposely limit yourself so that you're not everything, and that so you can have the, so we make a game out of it. And Alan Watts calls it, it's a game of hide and seek. And so we pretend that we're not God for a while, so eventually maybe we become like these like junkies, you know, and we just want more and more. You want more and more excitement, more and more of a challenge, and eventually you end up where we are now, right? And you know, it's just one take, but I could see how that could be the case. If you really truly can manifest anything you want at will, you're gonna try probably all different possibilities just for a taste of the experience. You know, I think these are stories and these are adventures. You know, one of the articles I wrote before this one was on the never-ending story, and the big baddie, the big villain in that whole story was called the Nothing. And so, you know, yeah, if you're wanting to continue in an adventure, you know, it goes back to the Peter Pan article I wrote and everything. It's like all a big adventure, a big story. And yeah, the villain to ending that story would be the nothingness, the void.
Yeah, and that is frightening, because from an early age on, the word nothing, you don't get nothing, you don't get any cake, you know what I mean?
Right, right. But yet it's the nothing that is the background of everything. Like I said, you can't have, you know, the positive without the negative, or, you know, it's like, how could you even have, okay, think of a beautiful symphony or a song that has all this, you know, beautiful melody and all these notes and movements and all this kind of stuff. Well, if there wasn't any rest in between or intervals in between those musical notes, if everything just happened all at once, it would just be this big dissonant chord or whatever. And so you need the space in between, like out in, you see pictures of out in space of these beautiful nebula and stuff like that. But if you didn't have, the 99% empty space in between or whatever, you wouldn't have most of the beauty. They two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And it's from this nothing that everything that's beautiful is the reason it even exists in the first place, in my opinion. I mean, it's something it's food for thought. It's something to consider.
Yeah, that was always a part of the meditations that we did, that at the end of the meditation, it was usually a guided meditation. And at the end, you dissolve everything. At first you dissolve the world around you. You start with the room that you're sitting in, then you dissolve the house, you dissolve the surroundings, you dissolve the entire world, and then you dissolve yourself. In other words, what you're constantly training there is dying.
Right. Well, you're preparing yourself for that moment when that you can see past the illusion. I mean, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they'll talk about right at the moment of death, they'll say to recognize the clear light, and they say it's your own awareness. And so if you can recognize that clear light, then at that point you basically you're enlightened, and you're outside of the, otherwise you get caught up in you go to these different series of lights that they talk about, the smoky white light of hell and all these different lights that they talk about, and there's these appearance, so they call them peaceful deities and wrathful deities, and maybe you go to the white light, and at first it's a peaceful deity and it's all great, but then at some point it becomes a wrathful. You're like, no, I don't really think I want to go back to earth again. I think I don't need to learn anything. And at that point, it kind of becomes a wrathful deity. It just gives you a nice little shove down here, and here you are back on Earth again. And I'm like, Earth can, has a lot of fun things. I mean, I'm not just, it's not just terrible for me, but I think when you can manifest your own reality, you can manifest better realities than this. Ones where where you don't have to have a job and work, where you don't have to have, grow old and die, and there's pain and suffering. But one near-death experiencer that I heard mentioned in the last meeting, he was talking about during his near-death, well, he was shown these series of visions where, they involved a seesaw, and the seesaw would go up and down, and he was shown bigger seesaws and smaller seesaws, and he was being told that, you can choose how much of a swing you want. And so if everything is duality and it's oscillating back and forth, and say you do want to have, experience, or, want to partake of the illusion, but you would have to choose how much of a oscillation you want in your experience. So that's something to consider. And I'm not even advocating going to the void and staying there forever. I mean, I think I'm going to stay there and see if I like it. And my goal was to, some of these people said they could have stayed there forever and they would have loved it. They didn't.
I don't hear you.
Some of the people that were near-death experiencers that were in the void, they said that they could have stayed there for eons and eons and eons. They could have stayed there forever, and that they didn't mind the fact that they were dead, that it was wonderful. And so my goal is I'm going to see how that void is. And first of all, it's going to get me out of this duality and hopefully out of the game where, archons or whatever are going to come and trick you and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I think ultimately that's part of our own creation. That was part of the illusion, or part of the game that we created to begin with, and so I'm going to see what that void is like. And my goal is to stay there and just hang out, but at some point, if I want to create some kind of reality, I think the key is not to forget. We supposedly have a mind wipe when we come down to this earth, and we forget that we're everything, or we at least forget all the stuff that we're shown in these near-death experiences. We're like kind of in the dark, so to speak. And so the goal is don't forget. that you're playing that fine game of nil, right? So you can go ahead and fabricate a fantasy for yourself, an illusion, a game, a movie, whatever you want, be the lead star, whatever. But just don't forget that that's what you're doing. And maybe that was the ultimate challenge, the ultimate thrill, is to come to the Earth game where you forget. And it's like, and when you're done, it lasts 80 years or whatever. And when it's done, it's over. It's impermanent. It doesn't last forever. And maybe when you're done, you say, "Wow, that was one hell of a ride." And I won't ever do that again, but you did it, and you can go brag to all your other friends that, yeah, hey, I did that game. But somehow I don't really think it's like that, because then that kind of implies that you've got ego at that point. But I don't know. It's just sort of the way I'm thinking of it at this point. And I don't meditate. I did for a while. I sat, and my first thought was, I'm just going to clear my mind and not have any thoughts. And after I did that I tried to do it for like an hour or whatever every day. And it helped me cope with stuff. Like if something bad would happen to me, I was just kind of numb to it, and I felt like, wait a minute, I'm kind of brainwashing myself. I'm doing my own mind wipe here. And I think over the long run, this might not be healthy for me. So I looked more into just having that mindful meditation, where now I go on like a walk, every day or whatever for an hour. And I just try to realize that, wait a minute, I'm not really me, that I'm part of everything. And I think I try to look at everything as like this big symphony of sound, or this big, I take off my glasses and everything becomes blurry, and I'm just part of everything else. And I look at the shadows between the trees, the leaves. And, I don't think, hey, my foot is touching it. I try not to think in terms of objects, that, me, and that's a sidewalk, and that's a rock and stuff. I just try to think of it as all this flowing energy, or that just flows everywhere. And I think a lot of the physicists are starting to see a lot of that, when they're talking about the 0 point field and the quantum field, and they're saying that 99.99% of everything is like empty space. That 96% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy, and it's probably just because their instruments aren't sensitive enough to perceive the energy. Because I think one of the near-death experiencers was saying that when these instruments they go off the chart. They can't measure it. It's immeasurable. It's just so great. And so it's not technically nothingness. It's not technically a void. It's everything. And so, like I said, some of the physicists are starting to speak in these terms now, and I think it's pretty interesting.
In this 0 point field, do we really need a savior there?
A savior? No. Buddhists said work out your own salvation, and your own light. And I know I'm just starting to read some of these other people like Alan Watts and Krishnamurti, who I'd never read or heard of before. And Krishnamurti was talking about how you don't need an external authority. And if you think about it, that's exactly what this white light is. People are like labeling it as God and everything. And it's like, I know Pam Reynolds, one of the near-death experiencers, when she was in the light, she asked, is the light God? And they told her, no, the light is God breathing. And so the light isn't, according to them, light isn't God. And so God is probably this they say that God can't be seen, it's invisible. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about this invisible nothingness or 0 point field. So yeah, we don't need a savior.
I wonder right now why at the beginning, when you started talking, I could hear you perfectly, and then all of a sudden it was very, very low.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best.
Now it's good.
I'll try to talk loud. I thought we had it, worked out, because you said turn up the volume, the gain, and so I did, and I thought it was good. But I think I do have a tendency to sort of run down when I talk.
Yeah.
It's just my personality. I feel uncomfortable doing so much talking. I don't like to do it, but I feel it's important. And so when somebody asks me, to do interviews, I always say yes. And I work my way through it. I prefer like reading because I know I make all my points that I want to, and it's in exactly the right language. But I understand how when people are being read to, it probably sounds like they're being lectured, or it becomes boring. So interviews are better. So but I have the tendency to drone off. I realize that. I'll try to do better.
So there was, okay, here it says here, we have the light within us. No need to look outward for external authority figures. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there was one near-death experiencer who was in the void, and she or he said that they noticed that they were glowing softly. So that even though they claimed they were in this sort of a void, because compared to this, everything going on around Earth and all these sounds and lights and everything's that it felt like a void. But she noticed that she herself, her essence was glowing. So I think we are light itself. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we are light.
And that's what the near-death experiencers and even astral body people that have astral projections, is they notice that you have a light body. They call it a light body or an astral body, and you look down and your hand is glowing. It's it's a translucent liquid light is how a lot of them describe it, or some kind of maybe a plasma body or something like that. But yeah, we are light. So I don't know why you would need to go to an external light, if we ourselves are light. Why would you need to go anywhere outside of yourself? I mean, it kind of shows that it's like insecurity, or that that you're not happy with or content with who and what you are. Just my take on it.
Yeah. So maybe we can listen to some of these.
Okay. Yeah, it's only like, take me 5 minutes or so to make it shorter. I'll just read through on this my introduction to the article on the front page. I make the really short snippets. So there's more than 24. There's like 28 of them or something like that. It might take 5 minutes to go through. So the first one, I don't have names on these, but if you go inside the article, I've got names for them. And all these are taken from the ndurf.org website. So you could look it up yourself if you want a bigger background. So the first one said, the void is less than nothing, yet more than everything that is. The void is absolute zero, chaos forming all possibilities. It is absolute consciousness, pre-creation, before the Big Bang. The next one said, it didn't have an environment, no sense of light, no sense of sound, pure neutrality. It wasn't into the light, it wasn't into the darkness. The next one said, vast void that was both dark and light. It was silent and still, strange, but peaceful.
Okay, may I say something?
Sure.
Here, the second one, you know what struck me right here? Pure neutrality. It wasn't into the light, it wasn't into the darkness. No sense of light, no sense of sound.
Right.
Many people will have a problem with that. You know why? Let's look at our attention span in general.
Right.
Yeah. So there must be something happening. Yeah. We are fiddling with the phones 24/7, and we cannot even endure ourselves doing nothing, sitting somewhere, relaxing, or very, very, not many people. Some can. I know that. And
those
just
are people that
be with themselves. So in that situation, all of a sudden, you go from fiddling and excitement and entertainment 24/7. Then imagine you go into that situation where there is
that's probably why they're attracted to the light, because they can't stand being by themselves. That's why it's important during this life to kind of bring it down a notch and start becoming more still and more silent and all that kind of stuff, and just realize, don't get into all this wild action and stuff. I mean, so that, yeah, those people are probably not ready to hang out. They're not going to recognize the clear light right at the moment of death. They're going to probably go back into more lives, and that's fine. They're not ready for it yet. They're craving that excitement, so let them have it. That's up to them.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're bad people or, but right there I can see where the first problem might arise.
Oh, without question, and it would be a problem for me too. I'm going to have to like really bear down a little bit in the rest of my life and get rid of all the distractions and really think about what I am, my ego and all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to have to focus on all of this, and realize when I get there that, hey, it's not so bad, to be in a place where there's no sound, there's no light, there's it's kind of neutral. I mean, otherwise you're on this roller coaster of ups and downs, and if that's what you want, that's fine, but hey, I'm not so sure I want that anymore. And if that's the case, then I really have to recognize what I'm getting into when that happens, when I die, and so that I won't leave that place and say, hey, look at that light, at least it's something interesting and different. Let me check it out and see what it's about. Because I think once you're there, I mean, I think ultimately you have free will, but it's probably harder once you get into their domain, so to speak. So yeah, and so the next one said, I noticed how everything came to be. There was nothing in the void. All of a sudden, the light was created from the void. I became everything and everyone. This was a guy that had like 3 or 4 different near-death experiences, and each one became a little bit bigger. And
separate ones?
Yeah, he had like 3 or 4 different experiences. And he was talking about, well, in the first one, this happened, and the second one, this happened. And so anyway, in this one, he says all of a sudden, he saw how light was created from the void and how he became everything and everyone.
Okay, what I mean is, was this one incident or was he like 3 or 4 times at the brink of death?
I'd have to go back and look at his case specifically. I mean, some of them they're not all near-death experiences. Some of them, they call them STEs, or spiritually transformative experiences. And so I'd have to look at his case. I mean, I don't have an encyclopedic memory where I remember everybody's experience and all the particular details. So to be honest, I can't answer that question. But I do remember that he had several different experiences of being of what he called the void, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. The next one says, everything was known to me, but that there was nothing at all. It was like being a part of absolutely everything at once, a glimpse into both everything and nothing. The next person said, I entered the void darkness abyss. It was everything, yet nothing. It felt as if it were raw, unmanifested energy. I felt in balance between the two. The next person said, if forever were to be an instant or 1,000 years was immaterial and irrelevant, I felt, abide with me here now, for I am at peace and we are one. The next one.
Yeah, I think they use different words, but the essence is pretty much the same, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and now I do need to say, I want to preface this by saying that I've collected, from the nderf.org website, you do search for the word void, and, I compiled all these little snippets from them. There's almost 200 that I found. I have to say that these are the best case scenarios. These are the ones where people had the right frame of mind. They didn't react out of fear. And these are like the 24 or more ones that what I call are their exemplary experiences for what the void can be. Now, I also have a link in my article to all of the others that included some of the so-called negative ones, where people reacted out of fear and manifested a more negative one, but those were in the minority. So I just wanted to be clear that, not everybody that's in the void is, it's all peace and it's all, everything's everything and nothing. These are just ones that I handpicked. So see, the next one said, no time and existence is purely being. When I die, if this is what I will feel for all eternity, I await it. The next person said, void. It was neither dark nor light, just nothingness, no thoughts, no emotions. Within me was complete emptiness. I seemed to be completely free. And yeah, like you say, you see a theme through all of these, what they're saying. They're all basically saying the same thing, but just, changing the words a little bit.
Yeah,
Next
and
person,
also here with the word emptiness,
right.
it pretty much depends on how you look at that. Let's
Yeah.
say somebody tells you, oh, your fridge is empty. So
Right.
yeah, automatically we associate that with something that is not so
Well, I think
good.
you're comparing it to the earth life. We've been here for years and years and years, and we've got all these thoughts racing through our mind and all these emotions that are flooding us. And, are these good or bad? If you take away the thoughts, you take away the emotions, yeah, it's going to seem pretty empty for a while until you can kind of adjust to it and realize that, hey, wait a minute, this is pretty peaceful. I like not being a slave to all these thoughts. So. But yeah, I mean, not everybody's gonna maybe like it, and they can go on and do other things. But so the next person said, I dared not think about anything because that would have meant that I would have manifested out of total awareness and bliss. Being in this state was beyond bliss. You want to stay there and not do anything to disturb it. Okay, the next person said, I found myself in a black void, completely at peace. No pain, no worries, no sense of self. It was fantastic. The next person said, highly conscious in a dark void, but I was not afraid. Apparently, the Buddhists call this the Bardo. And that's what I was talking about right at the moment of death. They call these different stages that you go through, they call them Bardos. And so he recognized that that's what the Buddhists are calling the Bardo. And the next person said, pitch black void with me glowing softly within it. That's the one I was talking about. He said, I felt complete relief, love, warmth, security, acceptance. I was able to surrender to this darkness without fear. And the next person said, it amazes me that a dark space, void of people and being all alone, was the most beautiful, loving experience I could ever have. The next one, it was a void, darkness, but yet I felt it contained all light at the same time. I was where I belonged, where I came from. It was perfect. And the next person, this is a really interesting one for me, I thought. It said, upon realizing the truth contained in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I had not read before having my NDE, I adopted the doctrine of Vajrayana Buddhism.
Vajrayana, yeah. That
Vajrayana.
is the one that I practiced.
Okay, there you go. He swore a bodhisattva's vow and dedicated my life to the benefit of all.
Yeah, but you know what that bodhisattva vow entails?
Oh yeah, I understand it. You come back, like you're basically free from the illusion. You're liberated, and you don't have to incarnate anymore. You don't have to take on any form, but you willingly. You don't have to take a form, but you willingly help other people try to free themselves and escape. And I think that's a trap in and of itself, because possibly we create and manifest our own realities. And you say, my goal is to be a bodhisattva. I want to be a bodhisattva. Defining yourself as and becoming a bodhisattva means that there has to be all these souls that are trapped and unenlightened and in the dark that need liberating. You can't be a bodhisattva without a bunch of people that need a bodhisattva. So which came first, the chicken or the egg?
You know? And you also vowed to come back and come back and come back until everybody is freed. So there you have
it. Yeah. And he said, this is because the experience I had matched the description of the passing through the Bardo of death described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So here's a person that never had read the Tibetan Book of the Dead or anything, probably didn't know hardly anything about Buddhism. And after he had this experience, he went searching to find out what the heck was that I went through. And the thing that he found that most matched it was the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The next person said, everything seemed to be coming or existing from the same complete source that I seem to be a part of now. The next one said, completion. It was perfecting the harmony in which I was a part of now. It was as if my being had become a vacuum. opening up, allowing everything that ever was or was to ever be inside. I was complete. I was what I believe was the highest existence of peace that could ever be, for my mind was silent and I was simply being and nothing more. I was a part of everything that ever was, and with that, I had no expectations nor thought. I was existing within everything and had no form or shape, just a complete, perfect state of being. The next person said, calm, peaceful knowing. I was happier there in the void than I'd ever been on this planet. There was assurance, wonder, and almost a bliss. Next person said, I didn't exist actually. I was aware that I existed only as a thought. It was neither black nor light. It was perhaps a void. I was not afraid. Everything was peaceful beyond understanding. So you see, when they talk about a void, it's not complete nothingness or whatever. I mean, they say they can't really put it into words. You know, we have a tendency, we have to put something in
Yeah.
you know, dualistic terms. It has to be this or it has to be that. But it's like in quantum computing, I think it can be both and instead of an either or. It's like a both and scenario.
Yeah, I think we have a problem with wrapping our minds around the fact that the void, the nothingness, can be the possibility of all.
Yeah, and I sat and I thought, because you know when I first put up this website, I mentioned the demiurge and the archons and you know, light's a trick, and now I start seeing more and more people on websites and stuff talking about archons, and it's all like in a fearful manner, and people are saying, oh, it's just, you know, whoever's spreading that stuff they're the worst people of all or whatever, and it's like, so I thought to myself, look, if I'm going to write this article about the void, and I don't want people now saying, go to the void, go to this void, the void's so great. So and I didn't know what else to call it, because that's what near-death experiences are calling it, as a void. So I said, I made sure I put it's a so-called void, or I call it like the infinite void, or the illuminating void, or the luminous emptiness. There's these different terms, but it's not just a void, because yeah, people think of a void, they're going to think, oh, I don't want to go to a void. It's empty, you know. So I was very careful with how I phrased it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course there are archons loosing around.
Yeah.
But that is that doesn't release us of some not possibility, responsibility, you know. It also is about our choices.
Absolutely. And they, you know, they only have the power that we give them through our fear. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't give them, you don't pay them any mind, you know, they don't even exist to you. I mean, they can only feed off of what you give them. So okay, the next person said, darkness is just a word to describe the void of possibility, lack of limitation, complete wholeness, natural wholeness, or sky-like essence. The
Yeah,
next,
that reminds me a lot what I said earlier, the void as fertility, the void, the darkness and fertility. In other words, from that point, there is an infinite amount of possibilities that can spring from that.
yeah, I mean,
Does that
our
make sense?
life as a human being, you emerged out of a dark womb, an
Yeah.
enclosure that was all dark, and it was kind of nothingness. You're kind of floating maybe in this, you know, primordial liquid or whatever. But yeah, you came out of a dark womb, very creation itself. So the next one said it was neutral. It felt like I was there a very long time, or in a timeless type of way. It felt like I'd always been here and would always be here. It seemed I was in there for forever. It's like I could have been in that void for eons and eons and eons. The next person said, all I could see was darkness with a void of light. So it was like black and white, except the white was strangely illuminated. So there's that like illuminated void. Next person said, darkness that wasn't darkness, a void that wasn't void, but was everything and everywhere all at once. Most amazing, profound, deep experience. The next one said, I felt unity with everyone and everything. It was the most beautiful thing that could have ever happened to me. The happiest day of my entire existence. I felt were pure joy, ecstasy, and bliss. And that sounds like anything but emptiness, at least from what that person experienced. The next person said, the darkness was so heavy it was like tar, like a void, complete lack of creativity, the great nothing and never-ending story, a space of indifference. The next person said, a void or place that was neither light nor dark, of no dimension or infinite dimension and form. So, you know, they can't describe whether it was no dimension or infinite dimension. You know, it's like both and you know, both and everything, but yet nothing.
Yeah,
They can't.
because it has everything.
Yeah, it's a nothing that contains everything. You know. So they say, it's the next one says, in that space between a physical body that had already been left behind in another dimension and a void, which I perceived as a black empty space, now free from the illusion, returned to where I had always belonged, to the huge ocean of luminous consciousness whom we call God. Okay, and this next one was from a person, Pam Reynolds, who was, this wasn't an avoid experience, it was a near-death experience where she was in the light. And she said, I asked if God was the light, and the answer was no, God is not the light. The light is what happens when God breathes. So, yeah, those are some of the good experiences in the void that I think can serve as good examples for us, you know, if we choose, if that's what we want to do. I'm just saying there's another alternative besides going to the white light. And these alternatives sound pretty darn good, you know. Some of them said they never wanted to leave there. And it was, you know, I'm not going to say it's blissful or euphoric. I mean, I don't know. But some of them did experience that. So, you know, also in my article, I like I said, I go through some of these different ancient texts and thought systems and, you know, religions, and a lot of them do talk about the void. And like I could go through like the rest of this right here, where there's just a few that there's some quotes from their main teachings that talk about it too. Or we could go in some other.
Sumerian there, right there, I have hiccups.
Oh, you got hiccups again, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
The Sumerian one, you know, we've only got fragments of text, and you know, we just such a small percentage of them, and they're pretty silent about who created. I mean, sure, they talk about Enki and Enlil and Anu and how the gods created us, but
the first hiccup that I have is my firstborn. So that teaching is nothing for the secondborn or the thirdborn.
Right. So, so they don't talk about, the Sumerian texts don't talk that much, from what I can see, about how the gods came to be, or you know, where they came from and all that. But there's this one, it's a retelling. I'm not even sure what that means, but you know, maybe it's
I would put it this way: the so-called gods.
Yeah, the so-called
self-appointed gods.
Right, exactly. So this Sumerian, it's from Nanursag's Children, I think was the name of it, and it says, "Learn to see beyond appearances, my firstborn, to reach out for the true essency. Learn to reach out to the source where yourself came from, the union of all opposites, the holy complementarity that was lost." So they're talking about the union of the opposites, you know, the non-duality.
And what is that source that text is yapping about?
It's Nanursag's Children, I think it is. It's a Sumerian text, and I do want to say that it says it's a retelling, and I'm not even sure what that means. Maybe they're kind of filling in the missing fragments and putting it in a more modern language. To be honest, like I didn't find that one from the. There's this library of the Sumerian texts, cuneiform and stuff like that, and it wasn't in that. I found it on somebody else's website. Anyway, in Hinduism, it says Brahman is life, Brahman is joy, Brahman is the void. Joy, verily, that is the same as the void. The void, verily, that is the same as joy. And I think that's from one of the Rig Vedas or something. And then even in the Bible, where it's, you know, the very first verse in the Old Testament, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light." So the light only comes as a result of speaking, you know, which is vibration. And before that, the spirit had to move. And before that, it was talking about darkness and without form and void. And even in the, it talks about the Elohim, and the Elohim is plural. It's not, it shouldn't probably be in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. It's probably more accurately translated as the gods created the heaven and earth. But, they're going to translate it the way they want to. So what can you do? And then in the Kabbalah, it says, ayin means nothingness. And according to Kabbalistic teachings, before the universe was created, there was only ayin. And the first manifest Sephira, everything comes into being out of ayin. That's like the tree of life with the different Sephira, and at the very top.
Yeah, but the Kabbalistic tree of life, in a real sense, that's the tree of death.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just going through the different teachings, and Kabbalah. Even their teaching is that the creation comes out of the void or nothingness. Here's something from Gnosticism. It says, the one is the sovereign that has nothing over it. It is God and Father of all, the invisible one that is over all, that is incorruptible, that is pure light at which no eye can gaze. The one is the invisible spirit. So it's saying it's invisible and it's ineffable and no one can see it or understand it, but yet they're describing it as pure light, which no one can gaze upon. And the pure light, as I've got some scientific experiments that I show in the article where they're saying that pure light is darkness. And even in some of the esoteric secret society literature and stuff like that, you'll find this sentiment. Like this one, I think, was from Albert Pike, and it's like Morals and Dogmas. That's like a mandatory reading for Freemasons. And in it, he says, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. So he's basically saying that the light bearer, the light, is darkness. In Taoism, it says the manifestation of Tao is the form of being, which originates from the non-being of the void, the great Tao. Great Tao is formless, it is invisible, and has no name. It is the original void of non-being. This oneness is the Tao, which is invisible and formless. And finally, in Tibetan Buddhism, and there's nothing about.
I have so many hiccups here, but it's okay. Go ahead.
I don't hear you, so hopefully nobody else is hearing it. It's always louder inside of yourself, so don't worry about it.
No, not literally. Mental hiccups.
Oh, I got you.
Here, oh no, nobly born. I could puke right there.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that different traditions, and I'm not advocating any one of these. I'm certainly not advocating the Bible or Kabbalah or any of that stuff. Certainly not the Sumerian text, but I'm just saying that all these different religions that people believe in, even they are saying that there's, this one energy that's behind everything, kind of. So in the Tibetan Buddhism, it says, now thou art experiencing the radiance of the clear light of pure reality. Recognize it, O nobly born, thy present intellect in real nature void, not formed into anything as regards characteristics or color. Naturally void is the very reality, the all good. Thine own intellect, which is now voidness, yet not to be regarded as the voidness of nothingness. And then in Nikola Tesla, probably the greatest scientist we've known, or certainly one of them, says, black is the true face of light, only we do not see this. So, and I was just thinking last night when I was lying in bed, I remember in physics, I remember my teacher telling us that, when an object is green, it's really everything but green. We perceive it as being green. We only think of it as green because it's reflecting the frequency of green. Technically, it's every color but green. So I was thinking, wow, if you apply that to a white light, it's technically darkness, So even in those terms, and I'm no physicist. I was a computer programmer. I had some science, but so take everything I say with a grain of salt. It's just me. I don't know, rambling.
Why do you say this is your most important article?
Well, because in the past I was always saying, hey, be careful about going into the white light, that they tell you to go to when you die, because John Lear was one of the first people that brought it up on Art Bell's radio show. He said, don't go to the light, it's a trick. And at the time, you know, give you a little background. I mean, when I was raised Catholic, and I wasn't like, you know, my parents just made me go to Catholic, you know, catechism like once a month. It wasn't anything. They just wanted me to have some kind of background, you know, some kind of knowledge. And so being born in the West, that's, you know, most of us are Christians, so they sent me to Catholic school, or not Catholic school, but just to these catechisms. But I was just a normal kid growing up. I loved music. I, you know, got into sports, basketball, tennis, and stuff like that. But when I started going to the University of Texas, man, I was taking these long computer labs, and I was trying to hold a job, you know, 20 hours or whatever. And I was like literally getting no sleep. There was some of these labs, I was up all night and didn't get any sleep, maybe 2 hours. And at that point, I started questioning, what is the point of all this rat race that I'm running around in? And so I thought, I did believe it was God. I mean, how can you have a design without a designer? So I thought, well, if that's the case, here's like the big the error, leap in judgment I made was like, which religion is the correct one, right? So I went and found a book. I didn't have much time. I read through it and went through all the different religions, and I thought it was from a Western standpoint, right? So I thought, well, you know, Christianity, you know, we've got the calendar. It's all based on AD, BC. You know, it must be true, right? And of course, I didn't realize at that time how much politics is involved in all of this stuff, you know. But so I got into Christianity, became pretty devout, I guess you could say. But then I met a couple of people, my friends. One was Indian, and he grew up like from maybe more of a Hindu background, although he wasn't religious at all. And I met this guy from California, Drew, and he was kind of more in the new age stuff. He wore a crystal around his neck. And so he was really into aliens and UFOs and stuff. And so we would go down to this bookstore, and the whole third floor was all metaphysics. And like he would go off to the aliens section, and I saw this book that was like Embraced by the Light, and, you know, showed a white light, and it's near death experiences of, and supposedly this woman had died, and she, you know, she met Jesus. And I was like, oh, I'm really interested in that. So even when they die, they're meeting Jesus. So I started getting into the near death experiences at that point. I think I bought Saved by the Light, which was Daniel Brinkley, and then Life After Life, which was Raymond Moody, where he was, you know, looking at a bunch of different cases. And so, and I started getting into other books, and I'm not even sure why I started to go down this tangent, other than um, I'm sorry, I totally forget why I started going off. I had a point, believe me, I did, but um,
Yeah, you were
anyway,
talking about your development from being
yeah.
raised as a Catholic, was it?
Yeah, but so, you know, at some point, and I started getting more into the New Age stuff, and the, you know, I wanted to read about reincarnation. And I was just reading anything and everything I get my hands on. And oh, I remember I mentioned John Lear, because that's what it was. Why is this my most important article? Okay, and so I started just opening my mind, and when I discovered the Art Bell radio show, he was talking about all these different topics: near death, aliens, reincarnation, this, that, and the other. And then when John Lear got on and he said, don't go to the light, it's a trick. And he said that that's what Whitley Strieber had told him. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm reading all these books about the near-death experience, and the light's, you know, God, and the light's loving, and it's beautiful. And it always like stayed in my mind, man, wait a minute, what if the light really is a trick? So I started investigating it, right? And so when I first launched my website, you know, that was all about, you know, hey, you know, maybe the light is a trick, you know, be a little careful about it. So I started compiling as much evidence as I could to show that, you know, maybe it's a trick. The reason I'm saying this is the most important article, because people would always come back and say, well, what do you, if you don't go to the light, then where do you go? What do? You just go stay in the darkness. And of course, for most people thinking darkness is just evil and bad, and it's the worst place you could possibly be. So why I'm saying this is the most important article is because I'm showing all these near-death experiences where people went to the void and said it was just as loving or peaceful or whatever, as happy and joyful as what the light was. And there's not these beings. I mean, there may be one or two cases where they had to come back, you know, maybe they hadn't died yet, but I don't see as many cases where they're being forced to come back, you know, and being lied to, or at least deceived at one level or another. And so I feel like in this article I may have made a cohesive argument, because I'm citing scientific arguments about the 0 point field from physicists and what their latest findings are. I'm showing all these different ancient texts and religions that are talking about the void. And then I just feel like I'm making a decent argument here that people at least ought to consider. And so to me, that's why it's the most important article I've written.
Yeah. And to me, other people might think completely differently about this. That's okay.
Yeah.
But one of the big takeaways for me is that, yeah, practice silence, practice being still, practice mindfulness, practice being alone, practice not being distracted, practice being okay with yourself. I
Yeah.
think that is important.
Okay. I thought you were gonna maybe like say, hey, but I think you can take it to an extreme. I mean, that's why I do kind of believe in the balance and moderation and kind of like
No,
the middle.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
that
yeah,
should be all
I
you
know.
are doing.
Yeah, I think, but I just want to caution people is to like, you don't have to become a monk and go sit on top of a hill and
No, no,
just
no,
totally
no.
do all the world and all society and your loved ones and stuff like that. There's a balance that you can, so go ahead and live your life, but as much as you can. And most of the people that are reading this website and probably listening to this, I found based on my survey that I gave, most of these people are in their 50s and 60s. I found like maybe out of like 52 or people that responded to my survey, maybe one person was under 30. I mean, when you're young, you're enjoying life, you don't care about any of this stuff. So people at this age, a lot of us are retired and we have the time. And I would encourage people, if you can, even if you can go through life and not even have thoughts and just put labels on everything, if you can just kind of experience everything as being one, like, and kind of tap into this energy that's flowing all around us as much as you can. I mean, sure, we need some happiness in our life and you can indulge yourself and stuff here and there, but I mean, as much as you can, start what's the word, when you go from one thing to another, you're going to start transferring your consciousness into and preparing for death, you know.
Yeah, it will come. There's no way around that.
It will come. That's right. And
No one here gets out alive.
and you can't take all your toys with you. It's
No.
so that's why I think it's important to dissolve the ego to a certain degree, and then to get rid of the attachments that we have to all the materialistic and even emotional, I mean, even relationships and all that kind of stuff. If you love something too much, I think it can be harmful, and um but like I said, there's people that are having fun and they want to come back again, and that's their choice. And maybe at some point they'll outgrow that, or maybe they won't. But for me, I think that we have the ability to manifest any reality we want. So I think if I choose to manifest some kind of reality, I'm going to try to manifest a better reality than what's on Earth. It's just my own take on it.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe I'm going for the shorter seesaw. I'm just gonna enjoy just a minimal existence with some nice music, and I don't want a bunch of drama and conflict and that kind of stuff in my life. I mean, some people thrive on excitement. That's their prerogative, I guess. But for me, um, and the key thing is to remember, keep that mindfulness, and don't forget that you're playing the fine game of nil, because it is a game. You're pretending that you're not God. Um, that's one way of looking at it. I mean, I'm not saying, that's one thing I want to say is I don't know this for a fact. I don't claim to have any superior knowledge to anyone else, but I've done some research on it, and this is what I found. You can, maybe it makes sense to some people, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. If people think differently, that's okay. We do not always have to have the attitude, you don't think my way? Heads off.
Right. Exactly. I think variety and diversity, and it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
without all those people, if everybody thought the same way and thought alike, it might be pretty boring. So, and who knows, maybe at some point 20 years from now, I'll write another article and say, hey, you know what I said back in that article? Forget it all. I was wrong. Here's what I think now. So I mean, people really have to just think for themselves and
Yeah,
search with.
but that is normal. You know, you are expanding, you are always expanding and learning. And yeah, of course, who has the same insights when you were 20?
Right,
That's ridiculous.
right. It's so true. And I do sort of, I mean, I maybe wish I wouldn't have used the word trick so forcefully, but I was just sort of replying to, like, all these near death books, Embraced by the Light, Saved by the Light, Transformed by the Light, all these books were such by the light. And then when John Lear said it, and don't go to the light, it's a trick. So I kind of took off on that and said it's, tricked by the light. And now maybe 20 years later, I'm thinking that maybe it's actually us. We're tricking ourselves. We're fooling ourselves, by playing this game of hide and seek. That maybe we're not really being tricked by some external entity. Maybe we are. Maybe we aren't. But
you know what I think? They can offer the trick, but you have to take the bait.
exactly. Yeah, they need your consent. You have to agree. And if you believe, if you buy into their system of fear and all that, then sure, you're gonna take the bait. But the more you learn here, then you kind of realize, wait a minute, that's not the real reality. That's just an illusion. At least from what I found, in my opinion. I mean, others may have their own thoughts, and that's fine. I'm just sharing all this research with those who are interested, and I know a lot of people really are searching for a way out or what the truth is, and so hopefully some of this resonates and will be helpful for those.
The Fine Game of Nil. Nil reminds me of my days in aviation. No items listed.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that that was an acronym for no items listed. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When, especially when I entered the United States, and we had, as crew members, we had special forms for customs declaration. And so I just filled out my name, everything, I signed it, and then in the middle, I wrote down a big nil, no items.
Interesting that they have that acronyms for that. Or an interesting acronym that I've noted is SOL, SOL, and the acronym shit out of luck, right? The light, the soul, the sun, and interesting that they put an acronym called SOL, meaning shit out of luck. Where did that come from, right? Who knows?
Wow, good. So, would you like to add something to this? What would you like to leave some final thoughts?
Well, at the end of my article, I do give. I have a Buddhist friend that I've been corresponding with, and he's kind of opened my mind to some of this because I was interested in what the Tibetan Book of the Dead meant by the clear light. Because everybody's saying go to the white light, and you have the Tibetan book, which is all about death. It's saying the clear light. I'm like, wow, what does that mean? And so he was, kind of showing me that it's all about awareness and all this. Anyway, he gave me some exercises that'll help you to realize that this is all an illusion and sort of help, like what I was saying, when you go for walks, or it's it's not a meditation where you sit down and just empty your mind and clear your mind. I'm not sure that's a good one, but just some steps to maybe help you see if you can get a taste, a glimpse of that void, just for you can't stay there forever maybe, but if you had one or two or three experiences where you actually experience it in this life before you die, then it'll help you when at that moment of death you'll be okay. There's no problems with any of it. So I have, if anybody wants to try those steps, they give me feedback on what they found, if they were able to do it or not, or they can email me, and I list my email there. It's WayneJBush@gmail.com. So that's sort of the thing I wanted to end on. I'd be interested to see what other people think about all this. I mean, there's things about Buddhism that really rubs me the wrong way. It seems kind of negative and defeatist, and it's all empty, and it's almost non-life kind of thing. But yet, I think if done in moderation, it is a good reminder. And it's, I mean, things like attachment to desire and all that, and overcoming, you know, realizing the separations and an illusion. I think all that stuff is good teaching, you know. And so, all I want to remind people is that just don't ever forget that you're playing the fine game of nil.
Yeah, I can tell you about my
That's the meaning of
experience
life.
with the pova. When you practice to throw out your consciousness here,
What
and
happened?
that was like 3 days, and you had in the morning, in the evening, and no, morning, evening, and after lunch, you had all in all 9 hours of meditation each
Wow.
day, and practicing exactly that. And and in the very beginning, the ones that did it for the first time, I remember we all had our trips going like, oh, I'm the worst meditator in the world. I will never go out. I'm not going to make it. Yeah, and then of course you break through.
Yeah.
And yeah, who would have thought? My experience was completely silly. I laughed my ass off. It was so silly. I had so much fun. Others were on an emotional roller coaster. You know, they were laughing. The next second, they were all in tears. Others were completely in tears. They no more useful.
Oh, I'd like to have that experience, so I'm going to put my intention on that. You know, I've tried for years to have an out-of-body experience, and I finally had one, you know, a few weeks ago. Actually, I had a couple. So I think if you try it, you stick to something long enough, and you set your intention on doing that, and you have enough willpower to do it. I think eventually, you can't expect it to happen in the next day or overnight. It might, but chances are, it can take a while, and you do kind of have to learn to let go, right? You not take everything so serious, and
Yeah.
if you try too hard, you're going to probably suppress it from actually happening.
Yeah, and for most of us, the ones that did it the first time, for most of us, it happened at that point where we thought, I don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, see? Yeah. There you go. But yeah, that's kind of my goal for a while. I mean, I would like to experience that. I don't expect it to be anything like, you know, they say it's not really, you're not going to see a burst of light or anything. I mean, you might if that's what you kind of manifest and think that's what it should be. But and maybe I've already kind of had this knowingness that, hey, it's all just an illusion. But I would like to have some kind of experience through meditation, like what you had. So.
Yeah, maybe you can check if there are POVA courses somewhere.
Pole vault?
POVA.
Okay. PULVA. How do you
PHOWA.
Okay. Sure. I'll look at it.
PHOWA. Yeah. Yeah, mine was really funny.
Well, thank you for sharing, man. I hope other people will write me too, and if they've had some kind of experience with the void, or you know, some kind of enlightenment experience where they feel like they were awakened or whatever. I'm interested in all that stuff. You know, I've tried looking for a bunch of meditation, like a repository somewhere where all these experiences of people that had meditation, and I haven't found a really good website for that. If people know of one, I'd love to hear it. You know, so I'd like to read on that.
Okay. So, Wayne, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Judith.
And that was really interesting. You know, I will keep an eye on your website. I always do, even if you do not hear from me.
Right. That's comforting to know. But, you know, I've been trying to write an article once a month or so, but I think at this point, I mean, I don't know how where I can go from here, other than I was talking about writing an article on witchcraft. You know, it's kind of a pun on witchcraft. You have to come up with a catchy little title for your article. So I was thinking of doing one on witchcraft, and that is if you don't want to stay in the void and you want to manifest some game for yourself, you know, what are some good alternatives. And I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I mean, I've already talked about it, and I think this article is sort of like my mic drop. You know, it's like, boom, this is my last thing to say, and here it is, and accept it or don't. And
Yeah.
I don't know how much more I can really add to this, to be honest. I mean, where do you go from here, right? I mean, this is everything as far as what we've been talking about.
Mm.
You know, the
What
meaning of
Wayne
life and where
really
everything came from. So,
what Wayne really needs is a crafts table, a magic wand, and someone to feed him pickles.
well, you know, when it comes to manifesting reality, you know, obviously there's people that get into the dark arts and you know, wizardry and magic and all that kind of stuff, whether it's, you know, Aleister Crowley and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I looked at some of that stuff, but I think what they're doing is they're getting further and they're more and more attached to the world, to the outcome of, oh, I'm going to manifest this, you know, new car, and I'm going to have this woman, and I'm manifesting my life. But they're becoming more and more and more and more attached to this materialism, and I don't think it's a healthy thing. Even if it works, I don't even know if it works, but that's not a
Yeah,
path
yeah,
I want to go
yeah,
down.
yeah. Bending the world to your will.
Yeah, it's, you know.
As we are all seeing in the TV series now, Strange Angel.
I saw that. Yes,
Yeah.
with
And
Jack Parsons, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
sex magic 101.
Is that another one? Another
No, 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 no. But they
this
use
one
a
is.
lot of sex magic in there.
Yes, they did, and they showed his neighbor supposedly was in the Order of the Golden Dawn, and he went to
Hmm.
some. Yeah, I binged watched all those episodes. There was like 12 or 13 of them. I watched them all like in 24 hours. A friend of mine had let me know about it, and it was interesting. But like I said, it's not really a path I want to go down, you know. But I did notice that I actually had a quote from that series that I had emailed myself when he was talking about the Golden Dawn and the teachings, and it had to do with opposites and all that stuff. And I know that Aleister Crowley talked about, he called it crossing the void. And so, yeah, even the Order of the Golden Dawn, they were talking about some of these concepts of uniting the polarities. You know, so
Hmm. Yeah.
it's interesting.
Okay, so thank you very much for coming again.
Yep.
And yeah, we will have Wayne back, that is for sure. Everybody take good care of yourselves. We see you next time, and bye-bye.
Thanks again, Judith. Bye.
Bye.